Kevin Gold, Rodger Wyland in Albany. Good morning.
How are you doing, Rodger?
I'm good, buddy. What was it, 19? We were trying to look up when you graduated. Was it 89?
Yeah, if you have records that go that far back, it was 1989. So I arrived on campus in 85. I saw the Mets win the World Series there in 86,
yeah.
But graduated in 89. And Rodger, I remember you from the, I believe, the weekend sports broadcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was 30 years ago. It'll be 30 years in August for me. And so, yeah, in 89, I was still very much early on in my career here as the weekend sports anchor at WNYT.
Yeah, I try not to use those numbers. Let's just refer back to late 80s.
Late 80s sounds pretty good.
So, yeah, and a big fan of yours. Listened to all the Albany basketball and football games. But back when I was there, it was the Doc Sowers Division III days when, if I recall, it was Potsdam and Plattsburgh were the big rivalries. So it's nice to see the program have come so far.
Yeah, and I don't want to get off the beaten path too much, but you know what? Back in it was my pleasure to be able, I've been doing play-by-play for UAlbany basketball on the men's side for a while, but I did have the opportunity at the tail end of Doc's career to start doing play-by-play with Doc at the Division III level as the program moved up. And I'll always cherish the moments because that, as you well know, Doc Sowers is a legend.
He is a legend. He is a legend. And it's great to see how far the program has come. I was there at the UConn game in the NCAAs and at the Duke game and followed the team and even went to the women's game in Syracuse this year. So it's great to see the program and the schools come so far on the sports front.
Hey, Kevin, let's stay on the UAlbany beat then, talking with NFL agent Kevin Gold. What's the latest on Brian Parker, who I had a chance to call many touchdowns for at UAlbany, and latch on with the Kansas City Chiefs. Where does Brian Parker stand with his career right now?
He's doing great. He's working hard. He's heading back to Kansas City, I believe, next week. So those who are not familiar, he made the roster. He signed with the Chiefs, the Chargers, as an undrafted free agent right after the draft. We thought there was a chance he might get drafted. Signed with the Chargers, got released on the very final cutdown day, and the Chargers wanted to bring him back. But before they could do that, the Chiefs claimed him. He spent all his entire season on the 53, but didn't get activated till about week 9 or 10 in the London game, and had a great game then, and was active the rest of the season. So, was active probably half the season, and looking forward to playing even a bigger role this year. He did a lot of blocking last year, but we're hoping that his versatility, his blocking and his pass catching ability are going to really stand out this year as he moves into his second season. So they're high on him, and he's excited to be there.
So a pretty good chance then he goes into summer camp with a really good chance to make the roster.
I really think so. He's got that kind of rare combination of a guy who can block and also catch. And, I always tell him it's a long way from Albany to the NFL. It was for me. It certainly was for him, but he's done an incredible job just getting a great career off to a start, kind of against all the odds.
Kevin Gold with us, NFL agent. Von Miller, the Broncos about to get paid, looking at a $70 million guaranteed as an agent. Talk about these contracts, because to me, Kevin, it's not so much about what the total price tag is, because if these teams want to release a player, they pretty much can do what they want. All of a sudden you're done. You're an at-will employee. But the guaranteed money, right? That's the big deal. So Von Miller, $70 million guaranteed. That's what you're looking at here.
Yeah, that's always the big deal. You'll see some big numbers on the internet about different contracts, but what you're really looking at is guaranteed money. That's the money that the player gets regardless of whether he's on the team or not. And unlike some other sports like basketball and baseball, when you see those numbers, those big numbers those guys are signing, well, they're getting all those dollars. In the NFL, it's different because they are essentially at will. And if the team decides they no longer want your services, then you're gone. And so all you have is that guaranteed money. So it sounds like after some pretty high-profile back and forth, Von's deal is going to get done. He'll get his $70 million. I think $114 million, and somewhere in that range is the total number. And that avoids the franchise tag. And I think, as you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, last year, I think 4 out of the 5 players ended up signing long-term deals, JPP of the Giants being the exception due to his injury. But I'm not sure the Jets are going to be as fortunate with their situation with Wilkerson, because they're kind of in the same boat, and it doesn't sound like a long-term deal is going to get done there. And basically what happens is the player plays a 1-year deal under the franchise tag amount. It's about $15 million in his case. And they can't renegotiate. They basically have to wait till after the season to get a new deal done. And that's what put the pressure on the Denver situation. They didn't want to see Miller play a 1-year deal and then potentially be on the market. So you got to get something done.
Kevin, if a deal doesn't get done, and I think we're all in agreement that it's not going to happen, how would you advise Wilkerson moving forward to hold out or play right away under the tag?
Those are tough. I mean, Von Miller threatened to hold out. To me, that's a tough way to go. I think as a player, you got to play, go out there, have the best season you can. The risk, of course, is the injury, because if you get injured, game 2, game 3, game 4, and if it's potentially career threatening, then you kind of lost that gamble. But to me, it's, hey, we're going to play under this 1-year deal and go show the league how good you are, and then next year you can go sign with the Jets again on a long-term deal or to the highest bidder. But it looks like, at least from the Jets' perspective on this one, and of course they have another deal they're trying to work out with their quarterback, but I think from the Wilkerson, it looks like they're content to just have him play that 1-year deal on the franchise tag.
Kevin, you just mentioned Ryan Fitzpatrick, so we'll go there next. What is the tug of war like here between Fitzpatrick and his camp and the Jets? Because it seems to me pretty cut and dry. Fitzpatrick has very, very limited other options, essentially no other options to go and be a starter, and the Jets have no in-house candidates better than him. Why can't these two sides get a deal done? From the agent's perspective, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the agent and the player, I think they have to be on the same page in terms of what their options are, what's realistic, and what your leverage is. And a lot of these things are kind of determined by, A, what's your leverage, and B, how close are you to the deadline? So now we're getting close. I mean, the Jets are doing what they're supposed to do. They're saying, we're going to be happy with Hackenberg and Petty and Geno Smith, but I think inside they have to be thinking, this may not be the quarterback situation we want to go into. From Fitzpatrick's perspective, he's probably saying, hey, I had a great year. You only get so many bites at this apple in the NFL, and I want to maximize as much compensation as I can get. I'm a quarterback. I may not be elite, but I'm at a top level, and therefore that demands an appropriate salary at commensurate with what players at that level should be getting.
Yeah, and Kevin, I hope you hope that they meet somewhere in the middle, and I think that they eventually will. I mean, as an agent, we're talking to Kevin Gold, who represents you, Albany tight end Brian Parker, with us here on Big Board Sports on 104.5. The team, have you ever found yourself in that situation where a player wants to make more, and you've got to tell your guy, hey, hold off a little bit here?
Yeah, I think but you got to know what your leverage is, and you got to know when the time to strike is. The closest situation I had, because I represent long snappers mostly, and we don't get in a lot of high-profile contract negotiations, but I do represent John Kuhn, who was fullback for the Packers, and back in 2001, after the parties finally reached a new CBA, it was kind of a crazy summer where there was no collective bargaining agreement, then it happened, and then there was free agency. He was in that same boat, and there were a lot of different offers, and he was weighing his options. We ultimately did strike a deal with the Packers. It was about a 3-year deal, $8.5 million, but it took some time, and we saw some other fullbacks signing, and it's my job to kind of explain, okay, these guys are signing, but we have the leverage. You're one of the top guys on the market. We need to wait this out. And eventually a bunch of other teams came into the picture, and that forced Green Bay to kind of up their offer a little bit. So it's really the agent's job there is to kind of manage expectations, and sometimes it could be hard because players, they know what other guys make. They read the internet. They see what's out there on Twitter, and it's hard to manage those expectations. But you have to be calm. You have to be realistic, and you also have to know when you have leverage and when you don't have the leverage.
Brian, do you ever wish you got into the NBA with all the money there is in that sport right now?
Yeah, people say NBA or baseball because although it's a long road in baseball, you got to go through the minors and ride the buses. Again, those contracts are guaranteed. So as a Mets fan, I always think about July 1 when the Mets continue to cut checks to Bobby Bonilla. He continues to get paid for years and years and years. Any of those baseball contracts or even any of the kind of the crazy NBA contracts, when you see those numbers, the difference between that and the NFL is those guys are getting that money whether they're on the team or not. So from a maximizing income standpoint, yeah, the baseball and basketball are much better sports from the agent perspective.
Kevin, I have to ask you this, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure if you represent John Dorenbos, who's the long snapper for the Eagles, but so this guy, if people don't know, is a magician, and he's competing on America's Got Talent, and he's been absolutely dominating so far. This guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, I do not represent him, but I know most NFL snappers, so I know him pretty well, and as a snapper, the old adage is you don't want anybody to know you because of your snapping ability. Because if they're talking about you, unless it's a puff piece in the off season, you really don't want the publicity. I give credit to John. As good as he is a snapper, and he's an excellent one, he's a better magician. incredible. He's got a great, like many long snappers in the league, they each have a unique backstory. For those who don't know, John's parents, I think his dad murdered his mom. He had a rough childhood and turned to magic to kind of get him through that, and is now both a professional long snapper and a professional magician. When most people aren't professionals at one thing, he's professional at two. So a great story.
Hey, Kevin, back on Brian Parker and the last question here.
Yeah.
Not easy to go from Albany and get to the NFL, but will it get easier now for Albany players? Will we see more of it? They've just moved recently to the CAA conference, which is awfully good. That's some great football there, and they've upgraded. I'm looking at, I have a privilege over at Albany. They let me into their Division I weight room to work out. So I'm up there working out. I'm doing my own little thing, and I'm seeing these recruits that they're bringing in bigger, stronger. I mean, they are absolute men. Can you talk a little bit about that CAA conference and how we probably will be talking about more Albany players getting an opportunity to play and make the NFL?
Absolutely. I mean, it is one of the top FCS conferences. That move does require some growing pains, and I think we've seen that over the last couple of years. But I think we're going to see, as the level of recruit increases, the team is going to increase. The NFL possibilities are going to increase, because every year you get a lot of NFL players out of that conference. And if I'm the Albany coaching staff and I'm sitting in a kid's living room, I'm going to tell them the story of Brian Parker. Because if you tell Brian's story, and he was pretty lightly recruited, kind of a wide receiver type, coming out of Rochester, came to Albany, and the point is, if you're good enough, they'll find you wherever you are. So if I'm the Albany coaching staff, I'm going to tell the Brian Parker story, how he went from being lightly recruited to starting to being an all-conference player to now playing on Sundays. That's the story I can tell recruits and convince them, hey, come to Albany, because, hey, if you're good enough, the NFL scouts are going to be there, and you're going to make it.
Hey, Kevin, keep up the great work. We really appreciate a few minutes. Busy day in the NFL, and we'll talk down the road. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks,
NFL agent Kevin Gold.